I am Arun Malhotra. Welcome to the ETAuto Unplugged. This is a program where we discuss the different facets of the auto industry in a unique manner. And we talk to industry experts, industry stalwarts. The topic which we are discussing today, in the episode of today, is on used cars or pre-owned cars as they are called. This is a very fascinating part of the auto industry. Internationally, it's been a large segment. It's been about 3 times larger than the new car market in international markets. But in India, it is different. And in this topic, we have with us a person who is an expert, who's an authority, who's a thought leader in the used car market. And it's none other than Mr. Ashutosh Pandey, who's the Managing Director and CEO of Mahindra First Choice Wheels. Welcome, Ashutosh.
Thank you, sir.
So, Ashutosh, how do we address you in this conversation? Should we address you as Ashutosh Pandey? Do you address you as Ashutosh? Or do we address you as Pandeyji?
Anyway, but Ashutosh would be better.
Okay, we'll go with that. Ashutosh, before we come to the topic of the used cars or the pre-owned cars, it'll be good to understand your journey. And your journey starting from your school days, where you studied, your dreams, your aspirations, how did you follow it to school, college, to know Ashutosh better?
So it's a very interesting journey as I see it. As long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a writer. And, I have spent most of my life in a boarding school. And the entire career, as I map it very simplistically, has been to do things which can allow me the liberty and the flexibility to do what I want, writing. Unfortunately, the thing that I want to do is still in works in a way. So I studied in a mission school, Ramakrishna Mission, and and then I did my engineering, and then I had to take a break from studies because of an illness that I had. That gave me a lot of time to reflect on myself. It was something that was near fatal in a sense, that gave me a lot of time to reflect on myself. And because I was always very interested in leadership, in extracurriculars and stuff like that, those things came very naturally to me. So my parents thought I was a good administrative services material, but I always used to just, in a way, used to get very overawed with what expectations people had of me. So the first time I got into management in FMS Delhi, and I did my MBA, and I got into TAS. So from what my parents wanted me to be an IAS, to the closest thing I went to as a consolation prize was what I did, was a Tata Administrative Services. And then I spent most of my career in the Tatas, working in many companies, but mostly in companies which were not core Tata Group companies. So never worked in Tata Steel, never worked in Tata Motors, never worked in TCS, but always worked in companies which were customer facing in the Tata Group. In Trent, in Tata, I started out Tata Click, worked in Tata Tea and so on and so forth. And then I moved to Mahindra First Choice and have been for the past 5 years in this business.
So, very interesting. You wanted to become a writer. When you were talking, you wanted to become a writer and becoming something else. I was remembering Amitabh Bachchan in Kabhi Kabhi. He wanted to become a writer and then he became a builder. So probably you followed in his footsteps, you were inspired by that movie. And the second part, since you were in Bihar, and that's what your schooling, I think your college was in Bihar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jharkhand, actually.
And Jharkhand, there the charm of the IES is much more than it's in cities.
Yeah.
And with your academic background, I'm sure you would have cracked IES. But okay, the loss of IES is the gain of the auto industry.
I would like everyone to believe that, that now I can never appear in IES, so I would like everyone to believe that, but I'm not sure whether I would have cracked it.
Okay, great. In terms of choosing your engineering and management, was there any specific thought in your mind, or this was by destiny, or it was something that you didn't want to become a doctor, so you became an engineer MBA?
So honestly, engineering was by sheer accident. I didn't want to do engineering, honestly, if you ask me. I wanted to do more of liberal arts. Honestly, I wanted to do English literature. I was always very fascinated with English literature. But again, coming from that part of the country, and because I was good academically, people thought I should at least choose a what they call professional stream. And so I went into engineering. But management was my choice. And I liked management because I thought it was something very concrete. And it was something which was applied. It was not abstract in that sense. And one of the good things about management that I have lived to this date is that management is a set of principles which can last, as you know it very well, that lasts one for the entire career, as well as a set of evolving set of practices that that you need to keep updated up, right? There was a time when TQM was vogue, right? Today AI is vogue. I mean, we never knew AI would come when we were studying, right? But the principles underlying management remain the same. So that's the beauty of management that I somehow intuitively kind of connected with when I did management.
So, Tata Administrative Service, a very prestigious service to join. And you said that you had exposure in 3-4 different companies in the Tata Administrative Services.
Yeah.
And you moved into auto, so-called the auto industry, about 6 years back?
Yeah, 6 years back.
So, a lot of people in the auto industry are lifers. When I say lifers, is Jeena yahan, marna hai, they started from that. Do you think it was a bane or a boon for you that you were not in the auto industry before 6 years? So how do you see this part of it?
Yeah, I think, see, the way I look at it, I don't manufacture auto in the industry, in the part of the industry that I am in.
Okay.
So to that extent, in this part of the industry, manufacturing of auto or understanding of nuances of auto manufacturing is not necessary. Okay. That's one point. Having said that, I think more than auto, understanding of a domain, what is more important is understanding of customer, right? And I think the experience that we've had as part of a task when we sold, say agrochemicals one day in a rural market, we sold tea in another deep rural markets as well as in urban markets. I worked in a telecom company, I worked building hotels, then I worked, selling in a retail store. I started a .com company from scratch. All these experiences in a way come across and give you 2 or 3 very strong capabilities. One is that you understand and appreciate and are not fazed by flux. So understanding that things will go wrong, etc., and you don't get fussed by it is something that I think comes easily, right? Second, a very unwavering commitment to customer is something that somehow has become internalized over the years. And the third is that a commitment to process and technology, because while a lot of people can be experts in a domain, a lot of that can be either moved to technology side or moved if you set up good technology and processes. So I think, for me, I think these are the learnings that have somehow kind of have helped me in this auto journey.
So great. I've been exposed to multifaceted industries, and I'm sure the more exposure you have in terms of geography, in terms of verticals, the better you become. You become more multifaceted, or if in Hindi I use it, sarvotmukhi pratibha or swavalambi, I would use it as a Hindi term. So that's something which I get.
मेरे हिसाब से अगर मैं 5 साल और ऑटो इंडस्ट्री और यूज्ड कार इंडस्ट्री में होता तो शायद मुझे कुछ और मार्केट्स का ज्ञान होता. ये सही है.
Okay.
लेकिन क्या ऐसा कुछ है जो मैं मिस कर रहा हूँ?
You're not missing me.
Maybe थोड़ा बहुत, but I think there are enough experts around me जो मेरे lack of knowledge को compensate करते हैं.
Okay. You're being very humble, and I'm sure the people, the way in the industry, they know you, your insight and perspective, the industry is of a much higher level. Now, let's looking at the used cars or the pre-owned vehicles industry, and I've also been a witness to it from a different perspective. If we step 2 decades back, this industry was very, very dramatically different. Unlike new cars, which has changed but not that dramatically. So let's take the time clock 2 decades back. How was this industry structured at that point of time?
Yeah, it's a good. I'm reminded, as you were speaking, I'm reminded of my personal story. So my father, and which year was it? I think it was maybe late 80s or early 90s. I faintly remember. I was a small child then. My father bought his first car, which was a pre-owned car, right? That was an accidental vehicle, and therefore he was buying it, he was getting it cheap. And I still remember the process that he was going through, right? And that involved a mechanic coming, the driver who used to drive his car, he had an expert opinion about that car. There were one or two other people who had bought cars or who used to own cars those days. They had a view about that cars कि पांडे साहब देखिए ये देख लीजिएगा गाड़ी चला के थोड़ा आगे करके gear change करके and so forth, right? And when I joined this company, say about 6 years back, 5.5 years back, and when I was going through the same, roll the time back 20 years and see where it started, I didn't find that much had changed between the late 80s, early 90s and the early 2000s, right?
Okay.
Most of the industry was C2C, right? Which essentially meant that the experts on the ground were brokers and the mechanics, and like advertising, right? Everyone in this country had an opinion about cars and used cars. ये गाड़ी अच्छी है, ये गाड़ी बुरी है. Parsis की गाड़ी अच्छी होगी because they maintain it well. There were a lot of such, stereotypes and conceptions. Army की गाड़ी आ रही है तो जरूर अच्छी होगी because they would have maintained it well. You are an army person. You will know these kind of some of these stereotypes, right? So there were many of these stereotypes that kind of governed this market, which is why the trust deficit was fairly endemic.
Okay.
Don't buy cars from Meerut, for instance, because there's a lot of. So all these stereotypes, most of them were unfounded, but the whole industry, although it was still very big, it was all riven with a lot of uncertainty about the quality of the vehicle, which is, to my mind, I think what it did was it went very deep into customer psyche, and people, almost internalized that if it is a used car, there's got to be some issue with it,
okay.
right? And unfortunately, we are still taken. The last 2 decades have been a journey to erase that misconception slowly, one by one, which is why, like you said in your introductory remarks, we are not as big in India as our counterparts are in the developed markets.
Okay, so, there are always some landmark events, whether they are economic, social, political, business, which impact an industry. So if you were to step back, and the way industries changed dramatically after that, what do you think are the events in the last 10, 15 years which have changed this industry?
Yeah. So there is one macro. So, and a lot of people will talk to you about macro. The macro, of course, is the dramatic improvement in Indian economy and the purchasing power of India across the board since the opening up in 1991. So I'll leave that aside because that's a macro story.
Macro aspect.
But within that macro story, there are, I would say, 3 or 4 phases of the used car development. And I would give a lot of credit to the OE industry, OEMs, who brought the first starting point of the used car programs. And particular credit to Maruti True Value, right? Because when Maruti put their name behind the True Value, right? And remember those days, you've been an industry veteran, you know that the products were not so great. And if those cars were driven for 80,000 kilometers, 60,000 kilometers, it was very difficult for any OEM to stand behind it and say, the product is great, you buy it, right? I think it was very brave for Maruti at that point in time to stand behind it, set up the initial kind of fundamentals of what it takes to do certification, and set up these True Value kind of counters with the OEM counters so that people could go and buy a used car with the name with Maruti, the trust that Maruti evoked. And that, I think, is the first starting point that started giving legitimacy to this business.
Okay.
So that was, I think, the first starting point. The second starting point is the fellow OEM Mahindra started Mahindra First Choice, both on the services side as well as on the selling side, which they extended this single OEM concept, Maruti, to say that, look, we will now start retailing multi-brand. So what you do for a single brand, we'll extend it for multi-brand, and therefore warranty will be given for multi-brand, kind of cars. Certification will be done for multi-brand. So that was what was being solved in that second, that phase one. Then the third part of phase one was OLX as they came in, where people could actually list their cars online for someone else to express the interest, so that you started solving a demand problem. So this is the phase one, which I could say.
So phase one, you're saying one is an OEM getting behind, putting their name across on a particular brand. Then is a large group, which is a respected group, focusing on across the various brands. And third is something getting listed or something registered.
Absolutely.
So these were three changes.
Yes.
But side by side, I just want to ask Ashutosh, there was, what I remember those days, there was a very strong used cars market. There used to be particular markets. Like Delhi, there was a Faiz Road or RS Samaj Road.
Correct.
In Ludhiana, there was a Gill Road.
Yeah.
On Chennai, I don't remember the road, but there was a particular road. They were centers of used cars.
Yes.
Whether you wanted to sell or buy,
Yeah.
you had to go to these locations.
Yeah.
So did they also change? Have they gone down or they still exist?
Yeah, no, they still exist. See, if you look at it, if you remember in Chandigarh, on Sundays there used to be almost a festival where the entire roads used to be taken over, and people used to come and park used cars and sell. So, but what has happened? What started happening with the advent of OLX and these kind of OE programs was that people started finding that rather than rely on third-party intermediaries of questionable capabilities, right? A broker, you know him, or a mechanic, you know him, but the capabilities are questionable, right? I mean, you know that he's a great mechanic, but does he know the intricacies of that used car? You wouldn't know, right? You'll have to take his word for it, right? So what people started doing is they started visiting their new car counter to say, look, I have this used car, can I trade it in, right? Can you give me a price? So they got an alternate to kind of doing these things. So while those things still exist, which is why I think the fascinating thing about the India story is that the India story is not a linear story. It is a stratified story. India growth happens at multiple levels, and that is no better illustration is there than in the used car. The core market of where all these things, like you mentioned, of the roads or the concentrated areas, markets, they still exist and they're doing reasonably well. But the markets which start doing very well, online markets, etc., they start riding on top of it, creating new segments, and suddenly there is an entirely different market starts appearing.
So it's a unity in diversity.
Absolutely.
So new segments have come, new ways of selling have come, but the olds do exist.
Yes.
They may be existing in a smaller proportion, but they do exist.
That's right.
That's something very fascinating about this industry. One of the other things about this industry was that the idea when you went into these columns in the newspapers selling customer to customer.
That's right.
Either you sold to your friends or relatives,
That's right.
associates, or you put it in a classified column.
Yeah.
What happened to that part of the industry?
That's gone online. So what has happened? So I told you about phase one. Phase one is those 6 or 7 years where from Maruti, True Value, Mahindra First Choice and OLX, they kind of changed the industry in that sense. Then there was a bit of a lull for some time, right? Then the phase two came when a lot of the new portals, they started getting money from venture capital, etc., and started experimenting with new models, right? The new models were classified, where they started kind of putting exactly, moving the online physical listings to online listings, right?
Okay.
They started buying cars from end customers by doing inspections at home or setting up shops where customers can go and sell their cars, right? So that became the second phase. And that was a very, if I may say, fiesty phase for the industry, because if a car is worth 2 lakhs, to compete with each other, they would give 2.5 lakhs. Because, it's all venture funded, young startups, etc., etc., etc. And that led to a huge cash burn and a lot of money poured in, huge optimism about the industry, and as if the industry is going to be completely organized and things like that. That was phase 2, and all that was COVID. Okay. Of course, there was a phase 3, which is the COVID phase.
Okay, we'll talk on the COVID phase. Now, coming to the customer, there are 2 parts to it. There is a customer profile also. One is we talked about the distribution approach, whether you sold it from a certified program, whether you sold it from the roads, or whether you sold from intermediary or on site. But if I had to look at this customer who was there for used vehicles or used cars, and I look back, has it changed over time, or is it the same customer?
So actually, if you look at, say, 20 years back, the primary customer was what we call a climber today. Climber. He or she was a customer who was actually using or had traditionally been using a 2-wheeler and wanted to use or try a 4-wheeler for the first time.
Okay.
And the entry into 4-wheeler was a used car.
Okay.
Right? And there are various reasons given for it. I don't have enough money. I don't want to risk buying a new car because I might kind of not know how to do it properly, and so on and so forth. But primarily, economy was a key reason why I would not like to go there, right? And the cars kept becoming more and more expensive as more technology came in, etc., etc. Even before the migration of BS4 to BS6, etc. Even before that, new cars started becoming more expensive, and the gap between new and used cars prices became bigger. So that's actually the bulk of the customer profile. That's been the traditional customer profile. Climber. It used to be, nobody knows it for a science, but industry experts feel that used to be roughly about 85 to 90% of the market, say about 20 years back.
That's huge.
Today, that is about 50 to 60% of the market.
But still is 50 to 60.
50 to 60% market, still sizable. But if you see, it's come down from 90 to about 60% of the market, right?
Okay.
Now, what has replaced it are 2 new segments. One segment is a segment which is essentially of younger professionals who are essentially buying their first car, right? Which is a choice car for city commute, which they are saying, look, I'll buy a car, I need it for commute. It's not a lifestyle car, I'll buy it for commute because that's more utilitarian practice. So it's a utilitarian purchase that people are indulging in, which is more hatch, which is more small car, mini SUV now if you get it. And that's how it works. That is again about 30% now. So that's the second biggest segment is there. Since COVID, a new segment has been emerging, which is now looking at cars as one of the option when they're looking for either a new car or a used car. Okay. So when they want to buy a car, they have in their consideration basket both a used car as well as a new car. That's roughly about 10 to 15%.
So, very fascinating. We talked of the distribution channel. The old channels still remain.
Yes.
The new channels get added on.
Yeah.
And you're talking the customer profile. The certain customers of a profile which you talked of, the typical climber, they still remain, but new segments are getting added on.
Absolutely.
So some things change, some things don't change.
Yeah.
Now, if I look at used cars and pre-owned cars, one of the things which you did discuss in the initial part, you touched upon it, the trust factor.
Yeah.
The trust deficit factor.
Yeah.
I buy this car. Who was the pre-owner? Was it stolen?
Yeah.
Was it accidental vehicle?
Yeah.
Now, has that been, was it registered at the right place?
Yeah.
Which RTO it was? Do I know the anecdotes? Was there 1 owner, 2 owner?
Yeah.
Is that getting resolved or that still holds true?
So, to be honest, it's only about 50 to 60% resolved. I must say it's much better than it was in the past. But as an industry and as a government, I think we need to take some more steps together before it can be completely comprehensively resolved. So what has been resolved, I can tell you. I think today we have certification solutions which are digital and where there is no doubt that we can find out whether a vehicle is accidental, what are the faults in a vehicle, what are the problems in a vehicle that need rectification.
Any vehicle, if I
any
do-
vehicle, whether the meter is tampered, etc., etc.
And
No
who
problem.
will provide this service?
So any of the portals that we have, including our company, any other company,
okay.
all of us can provide it. It's all software driven,
Okay.
or majority of it is software driven, and a lot of intelligence goes into it, a lot of machine learning goes into it. So that part I think is more or less sorted. Of course, people cut corners, etc. I'm not talking about that crowd, but there is a solution.
Okay.
Right? So that part is sorted. The second part on RTO and whether or not it has been a proceeds of a crime, or previous challans have not been paid, or what are the antecedents of previous owners, etc. It is sorted to say about 70-75%, because once the Vahan details are available, you can get antecedents of the previous owner to a large extent. But because all that is not yet completely integrated, it still has got some time to go. But I think it will get there in some form in the next say couple of years, given the changes that are happening. The only place where things are a bit stuck is that the vehicles don't move between two states or two RTOs.
This is surprising. I thought after the GST coming in, this should be easier.
The problem of this is that the number plates, the MH number plate for instance, or DL number plate, can't be easily transferred to say another state, right? Now what that does is that, that process is still a little bit cumbersome, right? And there are efforts to resolve that issue at the moment, right? And the second bit is that the government has just taken some steps to register used car owners, used car sellers, right? And protect the used car owners from, so for instance, you sell a used car to me, right? What happens during the time I keep the used car in my lot, and suppose an accident takes place, or some challan comes, you are getting the challan because you are the registered owner, right? Now those kind of problems are just been sorted out, but the implementation is still underway.
Okay, so a lot has changed. Some things do remain.
Yeah.
The portability, as we talked on phones,
Yes.
the portability of your vehicle from one state to another state because of
Those
the
things
different
have to be
RTOs
done.
is still a challenge.
Yeah.
Now we're coming to this, a lot of companies, a lot of products, they give warranty.
Yeah.
I wonder whether they're warranty or free services.
Yeah.
Now, is this in totally being done, or is this an acceptable fact, or it's just a marketing gimmick?
See, it is not a gimmick. If you do it, okay, let me just kind of rewind back. There is a case for warranty in used cars,
Yeah, that's true.
right? But you cannot give warranty on every car. That's also true,
Okay.
right? Because there is a reason why OEs don't give warranty beyond a certain point in time.
Certain cars, beyond a particular period,
Right?
they will not
Beyond
give
5 years, a OE will not give you a warranty.
Okay.
So if another player gives you a warranty beyond 5 years, they need to have a very good reason why they are giving you a warranty,
Okay.
right? And therefore, I think we need to know what those reasons are. Having said that, there are good reasons why you can give warranty on those vehicles.
Okay.
So if someone gives a 10-year warranty, clearly something is wrong, right? But if a warranty is conditional on an inspection of a vehicle that happens, and an inspection, for instance, in our case, an inspection leads to a quality score. And only if the vehicle crosses a certain threshold of quality score can a warranty be given, right?
Okay.
If the vehicle does not touch that quality score, the warranty cannot be given, right? So if you are honest about that, then yes, it works,
Okay.
right? And I think all the key players, that organized players, right, actually adhere to this, or most of them adhere to this. But warranty, certification in our industry sometimes tends to be used very loosely, which
That's
is
the
why
challenge. That's the
which is the
challenge.
challenge that we are facing.
Now coming to the financing part. Financing of used cars was always a challenge.
Yeah.
And the challenge is reflected in three ways. The first way, you couldn't get it financed.
Yeah.
If you got it financed, the amount which you can get financed, if suppose in other vehicles you can get 80% of the value financed, it would be 60%. Third is the tenure had to be shorter, and fourth was the interest rate had to be higher.
Yeah.
This was a concept about 10 years back. So people who were buying used cars, they had a big challenge on this area.
Yeah.
Has that changed?
So, our industry has got there's a saying in our industry that if everything is very good with new cars, nobody cares about us, right?
Very
But
interesting.
if
Everything
there
is
is
very good on new cars, nobody cares
Nobody
about
cares about us. But if there's something wrong that is going on either in financing industry or new car, everyone will look at us favorably, right?
Okay.
That is exactly what happened in COVID.
Achha.
The new car went down, right, because of and then there's semiconductor, etc., etc. Financing industry was in a lot of stress because of that. Now what that did was, surprisingly, you needed to build your order book, NBFCs, banking, etc. There was no there were no new cars to finance. And then suddenly people realized that, there was a lot of new used cars selling, which people like us and many others were kind of were kind of selling. And then they suddenly discovered the virtues of used car, right? Which is that, the cars are suddenly very good because, of course, the new cars since 2014, 15, and you've been, you've been associated with this industry, quality is build is good. These cars last for 200,000 kilometers without without significant issues, right? So cars are good, right? The customer profile, like I said, 60%. Even if you consider those 60% off, the 40% customer profile is good, right? And therefore, if you have a good car and a good customer profile, then what is the problem?
Okay.
And then now we have a situation where earlier, I'll give you an example, 20 years back, the difference between a used car and a new car in terms of IRRs was roughly about 600 bips. If at all you
6%.
6% if you got if at all you got a financing. Today that difference is down to about 250 bips.
Oh, that's a major change.
And all other terms are roughly similar.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing. The other thing which one sees is a lot of very fancy, stylish used car showrooms which have luxury cars. This is a development which you go see in any metro city. So what has driven that?
What has driven that is a desire to get that 10% customer that I was saying to kind of come and experience those cars, right? However, although it may be a little bit controversial, we haven't seen, at least the limited data I have, at the very high end, we are yet to see mass adoption of used cars by customers.
Okay.
Because the amounts involved are significant and customers are still at the initial stage of trying those out.
Now let's look at the vehicle. Since you said used cars is all question of demand and supply.
Yeah.
There's a demand pattern and there's a supply pattern. If today we are in the stock market of today, the used cars, which are the vehicles which have strong pull but availability is less, and which vehicles are available, demand, supply same, and which vehicles the supply is more and demand is less?
So I'll tell you.
And I'm talking of categories, we're not talking of products now.
So I'll tell you a secret about our industry. Actually, 3 secrets about our industry.
So this is open to everybody, the secret.
Because it's a stock market, so I can be a prophet in that sense. One is that every vehicle is unique.
Okay.
Right? So it's like individual stocks. Every vehicle is unique. No 2 vehicles are same. Unlike in the case of new cars. Right? Second, in our industry, if you look at this, our industry trails the new car industry by about 8 to 10 quarters.
Okay.
So whatever is the best selling vehicle in this quarter or in the last 2 quarters in new car industry, take 2.5 years from now, that should be the best selling car in the used car market. Roughly that kind of thing, right? So if you extend that logic, you will see that today SUVs are the craze in the new car industry. 2 years from now, SUVs will be the craze in used car industry, which means that today demand for used car, SUVs in used car is very high. Okay. We don't have any supply.
Okay, that's one.
Right. Therefore, if I get hold of any SUV, I can sell it almost at 80 to 85% of new car prices.
So here the demand is more than the supply.
The demand is really higher than supply.
Okay, then?
In the hatch or the entry level market, I have adequate supply, right? Because of various reasons, people are kind of moving out of there and the impact of slowing down growth there has not yet impacted because there's a large pool of customers already there. So that's the second part. The third thing that I would like to say, which is a secret, I think in our industry, a pure online sales is actually a wishful thinking.
So it can't be totally digital. It has to be what do you call
Just,
the word which is all both combined?
Yeah, phygital, we call it phygital, omni-channel, there are different words. You think of yourself, you have to spend on any category, forget our category, jewelry or any comparable category where one needs to deploy 300,000 rupees, 3 lakh rupees, 5 lakh rupees, kuch bhi. Anyone who wants to spend 5 lakh rupees, from the richest man in India to the smallest guy in India, will want to touch and feel that.
Touch, feel is important.
So there is no way in India for the foreseeable future that you can sell a car off the internet.
Okay.
And therefore you see a lot of these stores, a lot of online portals trying to build stores, a lot of store people trying to build online channels so that they can build a story where customers can discover online and buy offline.
Okay.
In our industry, 100% of discovery or almost 100% of discovery is online and almost 100% of purchase is offline.
Okay.
So that's become the sense in which, and despite being in so many industries, this is not a phenomenon that I've seen in any other industry.
Very interesting. Now we are coming to the last stages of our interaction. We would like to continue on and on, but we have a time limit. So now we are coming to the rapid fire round.
Yes, sir.
And one of the principles of the rapid fire round is my question will be specific. And I want you to give the answer without much of a break, in short, crisp. You won't have the luxury of explaining it in detail. Okay?
Yes.
You're okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay. Ashutosh is okay. If I was a buyer and I wanted to buy used cars and you would give me 3 advices or 3 commandments, do this. This is what you should look for. Give me those 3 commandments. What you should look for.
First, at least browse 3 websites.
Okay, that's number 1.
Number 2, test drive.
Achha.
3, read the inspection report. Read the inspection report 20 times because inspection report is very easy to understand and very difficult to forget.
So, one of the things you said, test drive. I was remembering of a Hindi film, Vidya Balan, entertainment. So your slogan is test drive. And like the Mahabharata, we would to say 3 things which you must avoid.
What you must avoid is buying off the internet.
Okay.
Second is buying at the price that has been told to you. Always negotiate.
Okay.
And the third is going in for a 100%, going in for the highest possible warranty. Right? You should always read the fine print.
So a lot of fine print has to be read.
Yeah.
Coming to the entire part of it, the world, the used car market is big. If you go abroad anywhere, you find these big locations, hundreds of vehicles parked. We don't have that concept in India. And what I hear is that size is 2-3 times larger.
Yeah.
What is holding India back?
Nothing. It's just the structure of the industry. See, in US, there are multi-brand new car showrooms, right? And therefore, their lots are very big. In India, every brand insists on a different showroom, and therefore, the average car sold per showroom is smaller, right? And in India, used car traditionally has been a cottage industry almost, right? So everyone's used to sell, from broker to a dealer around the park. So to that extent, it is smaller, right? But that does not make any difference,
Okay.
right? I think online has kind of erased the need for having large physical lots. And online is an infinite marketplace.
Now I want you to give 2 advices. One is to yourself. When I say yourself, it means the OEMs and the used car sellers. What they should do to expand the market, which they are not doing. Or they should do at a higher pace.
For the OEMs?
For the OEMs or companies which are in the used car business in organized manner.
So for
2 things, just 2 things.
Yeah, for the OEMs, I'll just mention one thing. I think the OEM should definitely expand take their used car exchange program far more seriously.
Okay.
I think there is a lot of There's a lot of potential there. And for used car companies like us, I think we need to internalize that it is a very high potential market, but it's a long journey. It can't be, Rome is not built in a day, and therefore there is no shortcut to victory. It's a journey that has to be, it is a building that has to be built brick by brick. We cannot build it in one day.
And what would be your wish list or the expectation from the government, state government, central government to expand this market?
I think allow portability of, in some form, of vehicles between one location to another location, one. And the second is, fast track the process of making the formalization of this industry, specifically buying and selling of used cars, so that whoever are the sellers or buyers in the sense of intermediaries, they are in a way registered folks rather than anyone kind of doing it, so that the customer, the buyer and seller is benefited and he's protected from any kind of fraud or any kind of misdemeanor on the part of anyone unscrupulous.
So Ashutosh, we come to the last part. We are talking, this is a crystal gazing round, predicting the future, and we'll hold you for it. We'll probably ask ETAuto to record it and play it 5 years later to see what Ashutosh said, does it hold true. Two things which will dramatically change in the next 5 years, or which will have a major change, and two things which will never change in the used car market.
See, one thing is, what will never change in used car market is that a customer will always test drive and buy, 100%. Okay. That is my considered view. Second thing that will never change is that I think the customer's choice will always mirror the new car's choices. So there's not going to be any significant difference. We just need to look at this. And the two things that will dramatically change over the next is that I think the existing trust deficit, that I think will more or less go away. And that I think people will have lot more confidence in buying cars. And the second thing that will go away is that I think India will set an example in this industry of showing a business model that is profitable, which has not happened anywhere else in the world.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for India to become global in terms not only of selling, but in terms of taking a business model.
Yeah.
So Ashutosh, it's been a fascinating talking to you. I've been part of this auto industry, but I've also got so many perspectives which I didn't know of. I'm sure for viewers it will be great viewing. So thanks for coming to this show and giving us time.
Thank you, sir.
All the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.